On June 24, 1947, a private pilot named Kenneth Arnold saw something strange while flying near Mount Rainier National Park in Washington state. As he described it, he witnessed a string of 9 shiny, unidentified flying objects traveling at a speed he estimated to be near 1,200 miles per hour. Arnold's story received nationwide attention, and the media coverage was instrumental in introducing the term flying saucer into the cultural lexicon. It also kicked off a wave of flying saucer hysteria that dominated the news cycle that summer. Only 10 days after Arnold's sighting, his co-pilot, Captain E.J. Smith, and a flight attendant also both reported witnessing UFOs in the Pacific Northwest. And on July 8, 1947, arguably the most infamous UFO story in American history began when the Army airfield in Roswell, New Mexico, announced they had recovered an unidentified flying disc that had crash-landed in the nearby desert. Even though they quickly retracted that statement and clarified the craft was actually a downed weather balloon, that didn't stop the public from continuing to speculate about what many now consider to be a government cover-up regarding the existence of UFOs and alien visitors. Meanwhile, Kenneth Arnold, the man whose sighting had started it all, was contacted by the publisher of the sci-fi magazine Amazing Stories, who informed Arnold he was aware of 2 harbor patrolmen in Tacoma who had reported seeing similar craft to Arnold's sighting, and were even claiming to possess pieces of the flying saucers they had witnessed. Intrigued, and maybe now a little obsessed with the subject following his experience, Arnold traveled to interview these men. On July 29th, one of the men, Howard Dahl, told Arnold a story about seeing 6 large donut-shaped aircraft flying about Maury Island where he was patrolling. He further told of how the crafts began spewing forth a large amount of a white, very lightweight type of metal, which fluttered to Earth, before an accompanying substance resembling lava rocks also fell from the sky, breaking a nearby workman's arm and killing a dog. It was the white metal substance that Dahl and a superior of his, who corroborated his story, showed to Arnold. And while the FBI would later officially deem their story and the material a hoax, there was still an element of Dahl's story that had a long-lasting impact on both science fiction and real-life UFOologists. For Dahl also told Arnold that, shortly after the incident, he was approached by a mysterious man in a dark suit and warned not to talk to anyone about what he had seen. This was one of, in fact maybe the first recorded mention of what would come to be known in UFO circles as Men in Black. The notion of Men in Black, usually regarded as men in black suits who present themselves as some sort of unidentified government agent, and then threaten, harass, and sometimes even assassinate UFO witnesses to keep them quiet, quickly became a recurring theme in stories of the UFO obsession that continued to capture America's imagination throughout the 50s and 60s. Albert K. Bender, a World War II Army pilot who later became obsessed with the UFO phenomenon, published the book Flying Saucers and the Three Men in 1962, and would eventually form the International Flying Saucer Bureau, said he was visited by Men in Black in the mid-50s, warning him not to continue his investigations. UFOologist John Keel, today best known as the author of the Mothman Prophecies, claimed to have his own run-ins with the Men in Black, pushing his stories even further by speculating they were in fact demonic, supernatural entities. Men in Black would eventually find their way into pop culture as well. Blue Oyster Cult would sing about them in their 1976 song E.T.I., Extraterrestrial Intelligence. The British new wave band The Stranglers would release a 1979 concept album entitled The Gospel According to the Men in Black. And, perhaps not surprisingly, they were featured on the popular sci-fi series The X-Files, parodied in the classic 1996 comedy episode Jose Chung's from Outer Space, which saw 2 Men in Black agents memorably played by Jesse Ventura and Alex Trebek. But their greatest pop cultural impact would undoubtedly come 1 year after that X-Files episode, and actually began a few years earlier, when a friend of comic book artist Liam Cunningham told him all about the Men in Black stories after seeing a black van drive by the 2 of them. Cunningham was intrigued by the idea, and set about creating a comic series which depicted these agents not as mysterious villains, but rather the heroes of the story. Published by Aircell and then Malibu Comics in 1990 and 1991, Men in Black was never a gigantic success in the comic world, but its concept was just unique enough to be purchased by Hollywood, and the resultant big-budget 1997 cinematic adaptation would kick off a film franchise that continues to this day. Or does it? The year is 2019, and Sony Pictures and Amblin Entertainment are ready to relaunch a beloved sci-fi comedy franchise with new stars, a new director, and a new global focus, with Men in Black International. welcome once again to Failure to Franchise, the show dedicated to some of Hollywood's most infamous mistakes, missteps, and misfires. This is Agent T.
And this is Agent C, and we are the MIP, Men in Pods.
That's right. And as you might have kind of guessed from that introduction or from seeing the name of the episode, this time we are starting a brand new event, and that is our Summer Surprise event. This is our second annual Summer Surprise. This is when we allow an online randomizer to choose some movies for us because, we have got a long list, over 100 films, and apparently we just let the randomizer say, hey, you fuckwads, here's 4 movies you never would have picked for one of your other events, so have at it. And up first for us is Men in Black International from 2019. Interestingly enough, just like our last episode, this is another continuation of a franchise, but we can cover it because it was meant to be kind of a reboot, relaunch. Would you say that's the correct terminology for this one?
Definitely. Maybe not like a sequel, but definitely in that reboot plane of speak. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so why don't you tell us a little bit about Men in Black International, Chris?
For sure. It is directed by F. Gary Gray, most notably for a lot of music videos in the 90s. He made The Italian Job, Law Abiding Citizen,
Friday, of course.
Friday, yeah. Straight Outta Compton, and then he took his stab at the soulless franchise overtake of Fate of the Furious. This is written by Matt Holloway and Art Markham. They wrote 3 of Trev's favorite movies, Iron Man, Punisher Warzone, and Transformers The Last Night.
I do enjoy all 3 of those films. This is true.
And it's of course, it's loosely based off the comic by Lowell Cunningham. Mm-hmm. The budget for this film is $110 million. Domestically, it made $80 million, and worldwide, it made $254 million, which is just about breaking even, which is not good because...
not what they were looking for.
No. And for comparison, Men in Black, the original, from 1997, made $589 million on a budget of $90 million. So this was way, way off compared to the original.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue, because before we start talking about Men in Black International, as this is a continuation of that franchise, so it's going to make sense for us to just take a moment here, Chris, and talk about how do we feel about Men in Black in general? Because obviously that's very much going to color what we feel about this attempt to, take it in a new direction. So I'll just go quickly first here, because I believe I mentioned this last time, or in a recent episode I know I mentioned that for me, I have this holy trinity of summer blockbusters. I'm sure I brought this up multiple times on this show now. Sure. And I always say, for me, the holy trinity of summer blockbusters that I just think are just perfect in, if you have to distill a summer blockbuster and just say that's it in its perfect form, I always point to The Mummy, the Brendan Fraser Mummy, the first Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl, and Men in Black. I just think those 3, and this, again, as I said, not to say there aren't other amazing summer blockbusters. Of course there are. Jurassic Park. I'm not a huge Independence Day fan, but clearly that's a very successful summer blockbuster. I'm aware there are other good summer blockbusters, but there's something about those 3 that I just think, like I said, I think you can just distill to say, wow, those are all 3. Maybe it's that I think all 3 of those actually do feel like perfect franchise starters in a way. Mm-hmm. Like you look at them and you say, like Jurassic Park, I like some of the sequels, but there's nothing about that first movie where you go, wow, I need to see more of that. But I do think The Mummy, Men in Black, and Pirates of the Caribbean, there's just something about them where you go, you walk out of the theater going, that was so good, I kind of am excited about maybe seeing more of that. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, all of those, again, kind of went in varying directions. Mm-hmm. But that first Men in Black film, just... Would you agree? I mean, that is just a perfect summer blockbuster, right? Just so enjoyable.
Oh, yeah. We talk in private and publicly that Men in Black, the original, is a blockbuster masterpiece. I just... it never gets old to me. The theme song rocks right away. The Danny Elfman score kicks in. And Barry Sonnenfeld is an interesting director because he's not really a household name. I think he kind of gets confused as Tim Burton sometimes. You know what I mean? And he's got this goofy surrealism to his films, but always a genuine vision. And
when he's on, he's on. You know, there are some, obviously, including a couple of movies we're maybe about to talk about. He doesn't always hit, but when he does hit, there's something about he has a very distinctive visual style. It is hard to explain because it is kind of Burton-esque. There's it's just this little bit of a heightened reality in the way he frames shots and the way he kind of moves the camera. But and just that the quirky sense of humor. But man, there's a lot of Barry Sonnenfeld films. I don't know if a lot, but there's quite a few that I really, really like. And I do think when he's firing on all levels, He's not to be messed with. I think of the two Addams Family movies. I think of Get Shorty, and then I think of Men in Black. And it's like those are 4 amazing movies.
And the thing with this original movie is that it's so like you just said, it was a perfect franchise starter, and you nailed it, because it's so funny, it's gross, it's action packed, it is so interesting, and every character is so well defined, and the duo of Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones is kind of unmatched. If that in that like rogue cop, kind of does whatever, he plays by his own rules, and then Tommy Lee Jones being the stoic, legend of the agency, and he's always by the book, and they just work. You'd never, on paper, Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith do not work, and somehow it works.
Just get lucky and you find the right pairing, and it's just that does 75% of the work for you, and that was definitely the case with Men in Black. Just the way those two bounced off each other, as you said. Will Smith's kind of like hyper energy off of Tommy Lee Jones' eternal grumpiness. Mm-hmm. It was just perfect. And the other thing we should say, and you kind of alluded to it, but it's also just an obvious like home run concept. There was a lot of comparisons at the time of Men in Black to Ghostbusters, and I think that's like kind of dead on, right? Even in terms of how you have one amazing film and then a questionable franchise.
Right.
But it's like, you look at Ghostbusters and say, oh, everyday schlubs working as exterminators for ghosts. Perfect concept for one movie, and also you can see the franchise potential. Mm-hmm. And then, cop pulled into secret society of people fighting aliens that live amongst us. Also, perfect concept for a film. And you can see how, right away, you can say, like, oh, I could see tons more of this, And it's just, in both cases, for some reason, it's kind of tough for them to figure out how to keep going. So I guess that gets into what do we think about the sequels. And again, let me just quickly say my piece, Chris, because I'm betting you probably can say a little bit more, because I've only seen Men in Black 2. I, to this day, have not seen Men in Black 3, and that is because of how atrocious I found Men in Black 2. In that film I've never seen since the theater. I just reacted so negatively to it in the theater. Because obviously I was very excited. I thought for sure, like, how could this go wrong? Mm-hmm. Your entire, you have the director back, the 2 stars are back. It's this concept seems like it, asks for 10 more movies. And I just couldn't believe what I was watching as it unfolded. And to this day, I still think my memory of it is that the biggest mistake that film makes is that, spoiler alert for Men in Black, but of course it ends with Tommy Lee Jones being neuralized and going back to his everyday life, working as a mailman, I believe. And in the sequel, I thought for sure they'd be smart to say, okay, now we get to flip the script on what we did last time, in that now Will Smith is going to get to be the kind of seasoned veteran, and Tommy Lee Jones is like not going to have his memory the whole movie, so he's going to be like what's going on, and Will Smith has to be the leader. And instead, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but my memory is Tommy Lee Jones gets his memory back about 20 minutes in, and they just go right back to the exact same dynamic from the first movie, and it was like, what a waste, and then just everything about that film just seemed like. It was so disappointing. And so I heard Men in Black 3 was slightly better, but I didn't see anybody enough to get me to bother with it.
Well, and 2 is bad too, because they do such a disservice to I'm going to forget her name right now. Maybe you know it, but
Linda Fiorentino.
Yes, her. At the end of Men in Black, again spoilers. She is Will Smith's new partner, and then right in the beginning of Men in Black 2, they're like, no, she's not. they just get rid of her.
They say he's gone through like tons of partners or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, because you kind of think like, oh, now we're gonna have like a cool trio maybe, right? But she's just written out entirely.
Yeah. Men in Black 2, I've only seen fully once, and it was in theaters, and it is a theater experience that I'll always remember. And it was me, my dad, and my brother, and the entire film, the theater was completely silent, like pin drop silent. And there's a moment where they crash a car and it holds on Will Smith, and then a airbag dummy that looks like an agent pops out onto Will Smith's lap, and my brother just goes ha, and the entire theater then laughed at my brother's dumb laugh. And that was my experience with Men in Black 2. Men in Black 3, I did give a chance, and I did see opening weekend or second weekend, and I think that movie's okay. It's not bad. I actually think that movie's not a bad movie. It is good because purely for Josh Brolin.
Yeah, that's why I heard I've seen clips of it. Like he's doing a pretty incredible Tommy Lee Jones impression as like the young K. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's all right. All three movies in the original trilogy have a clear-cut villain. We'll talk about that more with International, and I think that's a good thing with the trilogy at least. They have distinct villains. But yeah, no, it loses. Nothing beats the lightning in the bottle of the first movie.
Well, and I think, and to go just briefly back to Men in Black 2, you and I on this podcast, obviously a lot, we talk about like the secret sauce of franchises. And I think Men in Black 2 sticks out to me as one of the ultimate examples of what is the problem when someone tries to franchise something and sequelize it. That idea of like, well, I guess we'll just give people more of what they liked in the first one. Mm-hmm. So like I said, not only do they set the two main characters back to their same dynamic, but, people kind of liked Frank the Pug in the first movie. Well, let's just make him like an agent this time, And people thought the coffee room aliens were kind of funny, so let's give them like 50% more screen time. And it's like, all right, like you need to come up with new things for the sequels, not just rehash everything.
Yeah. And no wonder this trilogy kind of died a cruel death. Because going into... I guess let's start talking about what transpired right before this movie went into production. Because Sony did try to get Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones back for another Men in Black movie. But this time, Trev, they wanted to merge the franchise of Men in Black and the franchise of 21 Jump Street.
Yes.
We've said this in... maybe we even said it publicly at one point. But this is one of those incredible missed opportunities for Hollywood. And I think all of those guys' careers.
Yeah, I think I'm guessing you probably have the exact same like memory and reaction to this that I do, because I remember when I first heard that, because it kind of came out first in the Sony email leaks was when people first learned that there was talk about merging these two franchises. And I think everyone, or not everyone, but a lot of people, including us, probably had the same kind of reaction where you heard it at first, you go, huh? Like Men in Black 21 Jump Street? That's dumb. And then you sat there for like 5 minutes and thought, well, wait a minute. Actually, that's so dumb, it might be genius. And then just starting to think about like the comedic potential of it, because first of all, I do think it's just a shame we never got a third 21 Jump Street in general, because the second one is really one of the best, like, it's not only is it entirely like just again super funny. I love the first one, but the second one is just one of the best parodies of sequels and of franchises, right? So then the idea of them getting to push that franchise mocking even further into the crossover realm and like expanded universes, like what that would have been, and Men in Black was like at that right place where why not why not make fun of it? Right? Why not try something like totally different with it? And I don't think you'd have to be too disrespectful. Only recently we started to hear like some of the ideas that were thrown around for that movie. I'm sure you saw some of that, Chris, where like one of them was that Channing Tatum and Jonah Hill were, instead of being Men in Black, they were going to be given powder blue suits because they were kind of like trainees. And it's just like, oh man, even hearing that, like I start laughing just picturing that, I to this day, I really hope that script, because I'm sure at least some like draft was written at some point. I hope that leaks someday. I would love to read it. But yes, I will always regret that didn't happen, because I think it just would have been actually genuinely hilarious.
Well, it's a shame, because it sounds like one producer kind of kiboshed it. And it's Neil Moritz. He's the producer of the Jump Street films, or one of the producers, and also most notably the Fast and Furious franchise. But he just refused to compromise, and he refused to take a pay cut. And it sounds like Phil Lord and Chris Miller were down. It sounds like Walter Parks, who we'll talk about soon, producer on Men in Black International, was sort of down. But yeah, it sucks.
It kind of reminds me of when Sam Raimi like kind of put a stop to Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, right?
Yes,
like where
totally.
They had a script written, people were ready to go. Bruce Campbell's in talks, and then Sam Raimi is like, "No, I don't think we should do that." And so it's kind of reminiscent of that.
And then Sony saying, "We want Will Smith to do Bad Boys 3 instead." That was another one. So. Yeah, that was a huge missed opportunity. So then they quickly pivoted and they said, well, never mind. And in February 2018, off the success of Thor Ragnarok, they decided to say, hey, let's just reboot this for a new audience, a new vision, new director. Let's hire Gary Gray, and then Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson to be the duo. Again, like I said, from Thor Ragnarok. I have to say right off the bat, they wanted to do this because of the combined star power of those guys. But just as we have said in other episodes as well. This is Hollywood fundamentally misunderstanding why movies are successful nowadays. Thor is successful because it's Thor.
Yeah.
It's not because of Chris Hemsworth. I love Chris Hemsworth. And I think he's an incredible comedic talent. He's honestly he's a 4-quadrant guy. Like he can do it. He can do it all. But Chris Hemsworth can't really sell a movie. Thor can sell a movie.
And I'd say the same thing for Tessa Thompson, who I'm also a big fan of. I love Tessa Thompson, and I do agree. Like, so I see, like you're saying, I see the thinking behind this, but I also see the pitfall that you're talking about. In that, I remember when that was announced, on one level of me, I was like, I kind of get that. They were very funny together in Ragnarok. They have shown they have comedic chops. And then, but like, as you said, there's also the matter of, but they're not like household names. You know, I mean, he is, but only as like that one character, as you said. Tessa Thompson, very well respected, but not yet a marquee name. So they were really thinking just the Men in Black brand was going to be enough to combine with the 2 stars of Thor. But the problem was the Men in Black brand was already kind of bruised by this point.
Totally.
So you needed bigger stars if you're going to go for that gamble. I get it. I don't think it's the worst idea in the world. I think there is something actually kind of cool about plucking 2 actors who just work together in something else and saying, "Wow, you're really funny in that. Let's try again." That's like very kind of old school Hollywood. You don't see that happen a lot as much anymore. Like another kind of the only other example I can think of that kind of really hit was like people really liked like The Rock and Kevin Hart together, right? So it's like, well, let's try this a few more times, and some of them were successful, some of them weren't. But I do think there is something to be said when you find 2 actors who work well together. Why not try again in like a different franchise? But yeah, expecting them to open up, you know, I'm sure they're hoping to be like $1 billion movie. No, not so much.
Yeah, no. So as I said, F. Gary Gray is at the helm of this project. Again, new vision, new voice. For the first time ever in the Men in Black franchise, we have a brand new creative team.
And can we just, before we get into what I know you want to talk about, can we talk about F. Gary Gray as a director? Just really briefly.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And it's only brief because I do think there's something, we were just talking about how Barry Sonnenfeld has a very distinctive feel, right? So when you're talking about a franchise like Men in Black, that's kind of what you want, right? You want like a very particular vision, I think. I think you want a very bizarre, quirky, comedic sensibility. And that's why right off the bat, when I heard it was F. Gary Gray, I kind of like had a little bit of a, a little bit of a concern. Yeah. Because at this point, the only real, obviously Friday, very, very funny. I love Friday. But after Friday, he kind of like left comedy behind, except for Be Cool, the sequel to Get Shorty, which is not good. I don't know if you've seen Be Cool, but that's another like very, very disappointing sequel. And the point I wanted to make is I just think F. Gary Gray is one of those journeyman directors, right? Who you can't say he's like a bad director, but I don't think there's much advocating that he's an amazing director. I know I'm walking into dangerous territory here. I don't want to be like crappy about the guy, but his filmography is just so weird and so scattered that he really just seems like someone who gets like plugged into projects and go like, you can probably handle this, right? You know how to handle a big budget. You can probably get this in on time. And there doesn't seem to be like any defining. You can't look at a movie and go like, that feels like an F. Gary Gray movie. Would you agree with that? I mean, it's just he's just all over the place.
I will add to that point what you said when we talk about the movie.
Okay.
Yeah, because I find his career strange because I actually genuinely love Straight Outta Compton. I don't like biopics. I've told you this many, many times. Biopics and musicals, I'm like, oh my God, my guard's up right away. But Straight Outta Compton to me was fantastic, and I think most of that is because the performances are so strong. And then right after that, he gets kind of a blank check, right? And what does he do? The Fate of the Furious, and I don't really understand that career move to that one because Straight Outta Compton was a gigantic success. Why did he hitch his trailer to this mega franchise? And
I guess just looking for another guaranteed hit, right? That's kind of what I would think.
I guess so. Maybe he's going for a 1-2 punch and then get his own thing. But that doesn't make any sense because then he goes on to do this movie. So that's kind of why I think it's so strange. In the later years, he does 2 huge hits and then follows up with a journeyman director, Men in Black International, which he fights with the producer, Walter Parks, through the entire production. Yes. So bad that he tries to quit multiple times. Yep.
Yes, this is a movie that is known for having a very, very troubled production, and obviously we want to talk about that because, and Chris, this is one of our old favorite stories. It's the old standby. executive who is behind the project leaves the studio during the project. You know, this is like probably the 20th movie we've done so far that has this story. So what happened is there was a particular Sony executive who was overseeing the project. He was the executive VP of production, David Baubert. And he exited the studio in summer 2018 while this movie was like gearing up and getting into production. And the thing is, he was never replaced. That role, the entire time this movie was being made, nobody else was put into that role. They were still like looking around, I guess. And this put that movie into like a really precarious position because he was the one kind of championing it. He was probably like the exec who would have stepped in and kind of always been like the peacemaker or made clear like what should be the overall, you know, writing creative direction, right? And instead now you have F. Gary Gray and Walter Parks not agreeing at all, and kind of one of the first victims is, by most, you know, accounts, what was apparently supposed to be a very, very good screenplay by Art Markham and Matt Holloway. Multiple insiders have said that the original script was actually very, very good, and that's what initially attracted Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson. Apparently that script was known for being much edgier than what we got, and was meant to be kind of timely, and was like all about current day debates about immigration, which obviously were very, very big in the era of Trump. And so that's what they were kind of hitting on, and people were really attached to that. It sounded very, very different. The original bad guys were supposed to be like a music group that were supposed to be like an alien version of the Beatles who could turn into one villain in the end. None of this makes it to the screen. None of the immigration stuff, this Beatles thing, because at some point, as they're heading into production, Walter Parks decides he does not like that script and starts kind of, you know, heavily rewriting it himself and bringing in other writers, I believe.
Yeah, it got so confusing on set that Tessa Thompson and Chris Hemsworth actually hired their own writers for their own dialogue, which is bizarre. It's absolutely bizarre. Like you're saying, Walter Parks rewrites the script. He also started to shadow direct, and he started to direct when F. Gary Gray wasn't there. Again, this is all allegedly. This is all kind of, you know, insiders in the studio, but we'll talk about the movie, and maybe this sounds correct. But yeah, it's a bad one. Let's talk about the couple of things that these insiders had said. Walter is both the arsonist and the fireman, which is hilarious to me. No major reshoots happened on this one. It sounds like it was constantly evolving and changing on the day. So another source says it wasn't a Dark Phoenix situation, which that movie was heavily reshot afterwards.
Yeah, and retooled.
Retooled. I also thought this was funny. A classic case of two cuts, Trev. Usually it's a cut, you know, like an unrated or like a director's cut or a longer cut. Nope. One by Gray. And one by Parks. So the producer had his own cut of the movie, which he actually had final cut on the project, which is the most interesting part.
Yeah, because it almost sounds like he let Gary Gray do his like cut just as like a, you know, to play nice.
Yeah, with no intention of ever seeing the light of day.
Right. Yeah.
Which was funny because this other insider says the studio was an absentee landlord. They were nowhere to be found.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. That executive took off, and so like nobody was minding the store, nobody was paying attention to this conflict between the director and the producer, and this like production where actors are, you know, rewriting their own dialogue or having people rewrite their dialogue. The original writers were on set, kind of having to deal with constant asks for changes and you know, new story directions. And it's like no exec is stepping in and saying, "Hey, what is this?" And that leads you to a point where you said you end up with two different cuts, and then the producer just going, "Of course, like, well, we're just going to use mine," right? And I just. It's one of those stories where, and we're just so used to this now. I mean, this podcast is just kind of all about this, but I kind of like read all that, and you really can't help but feel bad for a lot of people involved. And in particular, you know, when you hear F. Gary Gray was trying to quit and kept being told not to, like, that's sad. But I also just think of like how depressing it must have been for Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson making this movie, because you know you get to a point where what are your two like, what are the two situations that could come out of this? Either, you know, you're making it, obviously you're thinking, though, this is clearly going to turn out to be bad, right? We're making a disaster because that's how it feels every day. But the other option is, what if this somehow still hits and we have to come back and do this again? You know, like that's probably like not that exciting either. Yeah.
Another sidebar that I wanted to bring up is Walter Parks brings in Chinese conglomerate Tencent to co-finance this film. And as anybody who's listened to our Karate Kid episode, I go on a little bit of a rant of Chinese influence in North American IP. And it's troublesome. I don't want to get into that right here, but I don't like it. You see the Tencent Pictures logo to start this film, and it just right away rubbed me the wrong way. So if you want to go hear something there, go to the Karate Kid episode. We get into it in depth, but right away my guard was up. I don't know about you, but
yeah, and I will. Well, let me also just say quickly though. Here's where I'll play just brief devil's advocate, and here's where I'll just for 1 second come to the defense of Walter Parks. Okay. Because
I thought you were going to say I'd come to the defense of the Chinese government, and I was like, okay, yeah.
Now, actually, now we got our own listening, Chris. Let me finally, this many episodes in, this is why I really want to do this podcast.
This is suddenly this is the biggest hit of episodes that we've ever had.
No, with the Walter Parks situation, I will say, because he was the producer on all of these, and because 2 and 3 hadn't performed very well, I kind of do understand what I'm sure was his like reticence about this, and like how anxious he felt about getting this right. You know, like this was his last chance, I think, in his mind, probably to save this franchise,
sure,
and to get it back to like what it should have been since the beginning. So I don't really blame him for being so protective of it, and you know, having like his own kind of vision of it. I will just say, and this is where you often get annoyed with producers, he should have figured that out earlier on, and he should have hired a director who was on board with that vision from the beginning. I'm sure he could have found somebody to execute his vision that he had, and Walter Parks eventually, once a story was published about this in the Hollywood Reporter, kind of, you know, covering everything we just talked about the trouble production, him and his producing partner did put out like their own response statement. And I don't want to read too much of it, but it was basically just that kind of statement of saying, look, you weren't there, and you don't understand that for all your stories about us like rewriting. Actually, I will read this part. He says, in some ways, this is not surprising in that the reporter did not attribute sources and never spoke to us or other key people with actual knowledge of what occurred on set, including our writers. Had they spoken to us, we would have described what actually happened. Art Markham and Matt Holloway's excellent first draft was greenlit with a scant 17 weeks of prep time. This all but assured substantial writing would occur throughout the production. The rewrites largely dealt with 3 issues: production budget constraints, punch-ups for the actors, and reconceiving our villains to accommodate the casting of Larry and Laurent Bourgeois, aka Les Twins, who were Gary Gray's choice to play the antagonists of the film. So he's kind of throwing him under the bus a little bit there.
Yep.
But I will say, to go back to that first part of the quote, when he says, well, if they had just asked us, we would have told them that the draft was greenlit, we only had 17 weeks of prep time, you do want to step and say, well, hey, that's kind of a problem, right? Why are you rushing to make this again? Like, and I know that's maybe on a studio level, but this is where we get into this. One of the biggest disasters of Hollywood in the past decade plus has been racing to meet a release date and not taking your damn time to make sure the movie is right, and just saying like, let's just start working on the movie. Once we get to a certain point, then let's like think about when to release it. That used to be the way things worked, and this desire now to hit release dates, we've just seen this happen over and over again.
The best part of that, the beginning of that quote, is that we know. We know it was greenlit. We know that their original vision was greenlit. What are you defending here? We're talking about what happened after that green light.
Yes.
So I find the quote kind of funny because they're almost agreeing by not saying anything.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. His statement doesn't do anything. Doesn't really do him any favors. It doesn't really answer any questions. But who knows? Maybe he was right. Maybe he, maybe the decisions he made, maybe the conflicts he had with F. Gary Gray were ultimately for naught. Maybe they still made a great movie. Let's find out. Should we talk about the movie over on the other side?
Yeah, let's do it.
We are a rumor, recognizable only as déjà vu and dismissed just as quickly. We are the best kept secret in the universe.
I know.
I want in. You erased my parents' memories, but you didn't get mine. Took me 20 years to find you. How many people can say that? I found you, which makes me perfect for this job.
Agent M, we may have a problem in London.
Welcome in. You will be with Agent H.
MIB, you Carillion scum. And FYI, your little club here sucks.
Come on, the world's not going to save itself.
I'm driving. That really should be here. cardinal in this country.
I'm so faded, no exaggeration.
Shall we?
I thought that we were here.
We are.
Step on it, would you, Freddy? You go to H.
What happened here?
What do you think happened? We got our asses kicked.
Sorry.
Wait, are you a queen?
Indeed, she is.
I pledge loyalty eternal to you.
No, I'm not interested.
Too late. I already pledged the loyalty. I wish you'd said no before.
We've never faced a threat like the Hive. They can take the form of anyone.
I haven't seen that before.
Even our own agents.
Do we have a plan?
You know, sometimes you have to trust your gut.
Men in Black has been compromised and trusts no one.
The dance that you're doing is
See, we protect the Earth.
how they do where you from.
And that means everyone and everything on it.
Yeah, baby!
We are the men in black. The men and women in black.
Yeah, ha. Perfectly done.
Are you suggesting that we try the most powerful weapon in the galaxy for fun?
Do it.
Press the button. Turn it up a few.
The Men in Black have expanded internationally, but so have the villains of the universe. Decorated but cocky Agent H and determined rookie Agent M embark on a globe-trotting mission to save the agency and ultimately the world from a shape-shifting alien duo who's on the hunt for a hidden superweapon of mass destruction. However, heavy clouds of mistrust and a scent of betrayal envelop the once incorruptible agency, as there might be a well-placed mole in their midst.
Dun, dun, dun. Chris, I know for you, this was a second-time watch. You saw this in the theater, correct?
I did not see it in the theater.
Oh, okay.
But I saw it the year of release, yes.
Okay, yeah. So I've never seen it before. So I'm curious to hear from you first, as someone who's seen this film twice now. Your thoughts on Men in Black International.
So everybody listening, if you go to your podcast app, we put links there for our socials and whatnot, and we always put our Letterboxd there as well. And I'm just going to read my Letterboxd review, and then I'll get into a little bit. But this is from August 2019. I gave it, at the time, 2 stars out of 4. Filmmaking at its most okayest. It's just meh in black. That's it. That's all I said. There's nothing fresh here at all. There's no wow factor. There's really nothing to propel the franchise in a new era, new entertaining era. It consistently falls flat in its action, its look, its humor, and which is a shame because, you know, Chris Hemsworth is a funny guy, and at this point we know he's funny. And also Kumail Nanjiani plays a voice. He plays an alien character, and he's a funny guy too, but not here. The script just doesn't do anybody any favors. It's kind of a nothing burger of a script, in my opinion. And just the bare minimum effort by everybody involved has created the definition of a background movie. And that's kind of my thoughts on this movie. It hasn't changed. I texted people while I was watching this the second time, and I missed nothing. What about you?
Well, I thought it was better than Men in Black 2.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. I'm kind of right with you.
What is better than sewage?
I'm kind of with you. This is actually one of those episodes I was somewhat dreading recording. That's a great thing to say. Now everyone's just, so you know it's bad, so I'll just turn it off. But it's it's more just that this is one of those movies I find very kind of hard to talk about on a certain level because, as you just said, it's just a flat line of a movie, but not aggressively so where you get angry with it. Mm-hmm, I wouldn't say I hated this movie, but I also wouldn't say I liked or loved it. You know, it's just kind of like it's in one ear and out the other. You know, and I was actually kind of with it for a bit, I will admit. Like, I thought the first about... Well, it's weird, because I actually wrote in my notes that, in my kind of, like, wrap-up notes, I wrote, it's not exactly clear when the movie loses you. You just realize at some point it did. But I think the beginning is actually kind of okay. It starts with this like flashback sequence with Chris Hemsworth as Agent H and his boss Liam Neeson as High T, who's the head of the MIB UK branch, on this like mission to the Eiffel Tower. And I thought there was actually some kind of clever jokes in there. I like the bit where when they go up to the top of the Eiffel Tower, there's a couple up there and the man's proposing. And they neuralize them and then tell the man, okay, we'll just ask her again on the elevator. But then they kind of keep having to neuralize them as the mission goes on, and they have to keep reminding them, okay, well, now ask her down on the ground. Like, I thought that stuff was actually kind of funny. And then in the early moments, I will say the kind of origin story of Tessa Thompson's character was actually, I thought, a very nice addition to this franchise. Like a little girl who saw the MIB when she was young, and they didn't realize she saw them, so they didn't neuralize her. And she grows up obsessed with them and is trying to find them to get recruited. I actually liked all that. And I do think both Hemsworth and Thompson, just to get this out of the way, I think they're both fine in this. And I do think they work really well together. They do have great chemistry together. And I think Tessa Thompson should be a star. In a world where we still had stars that weren't kind of, just grandfathered in from previous generations, if we could still make new stars, she is very, very magnetic on screen. And I think she's very likable in this. So I was kind of into watching her get recruited and like become the new agent. And I was like, oh yeah, this is kind of giving me like memories of how fun that was when it was Will Smith in the first one. And then it just kind of going on and on. And you get more into the mission, and you do get to a certain point where you realize you're not really paying attention anymore.
Yeah.
It just loses you. Yeah, it's a shame because I think they've got the right two like actors to be like a very fun duo and carry the movie. But yeah, unfortunately the movie's not doing them any favors.
I'll tell you the moment the movie just becomes blah, and it's 16 minutes in, and where Molly is just given her first assignment. And everything leading up to that is interesting. I do want to see some character development. I would love to see Molly train. I would love to see her finally have a glimpse into this world she's always dreamt of and known about, and just being completely wowed and excited and like, oh my god, I actually found the agency. I am a man in black. Like, but no. Nothing happens. She just gets probation, and she's on an assignment, and she's fully indoctrinated in the world, and it's business as usual.
Yeah,
and I found that so
way too fast. Yeah.
Oh, it was so weird. There's a moment where Chris Hemsworth comes into the agency, and Tessa Thompson is having coffee with two aliens, and like nothing is weird about this. And they stare at Chris Hemsworth, and one of the aliens like slows down time with her powers.
All right, that part was kind of funny though. That was kind of funny.
No, it's kind of funny. I'm not disagreeing that the comedic effect of it works. What I am disagreeing with and what I don't like is that why is Molly totally okay with this? Like, why does she give no reaction? I hate this when movies about fantastical worlds happen. But you're telling me that this character has lived her entire life from childhood working to finding aliens and finding this secret society, and once she gets in, she's just like whatever, like one of the guys. And that just is annoying to me. And again, it's not one to be mad about. Like, I'm not mad at it. I sound animated right now, but it just becomes another blah movie. Like you said,
no, you're right. It's a great failing of the script, whatever version of the script we're talking about, that there's something inherently broken with both characters. And we just hit on hers. Like, this movie would work much better if Molly or Agent M was just blown away the entire movie. Like, she's finally living her dream, but this is also new and scary to her. That would be much better. And then the problem with Agent H, and this is where we're all, it's funny because we might already have to get into spoilers, which I was going to put off for a bit, but there's this ongoing idea with Agent H in that, so as I said, the movie starts with this like mission from the past with him and Liam Neeson, High T, repelling this invasion of something called the Hive at the Eiffel Tower. And apparently that mission has made Agent H a star ever since. Like, he's thought of as like, people always talk about how like, well, he repelled the Hive with nothing but his weapon and his wits, and it was just so incredible. But they keep talking in the movie about how since then he's kind of like lost it, right? Like he's, High T says, I once thought you were going to take over this branch, but, in recent years, you're just not the same. But the movie never like shows us what that means.
Mm-hmm.
Like he seems pretty capable for the most part throughout the movie. And it's really weird because it's one of those like trying to have its cake and eat it too cases where they keep telling us that he's this like kind of like washed up agent, but they never want to let him seem that washed up and that like bad at his job. So I wasn't really getting that. Do you know what I mean? Like it doesn't work on any level where it's like, well, what's the problem with this guy? Like why does no one trust him anymore? Why is he so like on the outs? Because he seems to be doing his job. He seems to be doing fine. And he doesn't seem that dumb or out of it. So I didn't really get that. And that definitely feels like a leftover of a previous version of the script and something that got really screwed up in like rewriting and like production woes, I think.
And why are we led to believe sorta that he should be untrustworthy?
Right? Yeah.
There's no point in the movie that I ever am like, well, like this guy's a bad guy. And spoilers, he doesn't turn out to be a bad guy. And I'm like, like obviously not. He's charming. He's handsome. He's doing the job well. He's getting things done. He's propelling the plot. He's propelling the narrative. He's getting leads. He kind of knows every step of the way what to do. And like, why do we like this guy?
in fact, he's like too capable and too normal of an agent. Because again, I was thinking, you really want this to feel different than the Tommy Lee Jones, Will Smith iteration of this franchise.
Yes.
So I think it's very, very important to make a duo that feels new and feels different. And I was thinking, if you actually gave me the Agent H that the movie at least at one point seems to be suggesting that it might be at the start of like this really rogue, crazy agent who just doesn't play by the books and does like everything like, just rushes off in every situation, doesn't think about anything, or just a complete idiot. Either of those would be different.
Yes.
But instead, he's basically just a more handsome, younger Tommy Lee Jones, kind of. It's like he's just a good agent. So that's kind of, not only is it kind of boring, but I think it's also a misuse of Chris Hemsworth. I think we want to see him be like more roguish and more ridiculous.
And I think, again, pair him up with the Molly that I described as somebody that is completely so stunned and excited with her job that she almost like she really looks up to this guy, and wants to be on the job, and she's like ecstatic about it. It's kind of like I'd even say maybe even like Ariadne in Inception. She's following around Cobb, Leo DiCaprio the whole movie, and she's excited to be there. She's excited to make the maze. She's all in on Inception. But here, again, Agent H is just another good agent, and Agent M is the rookie that is kind of by the book, sort of, kind of.
Yeah, like the one of the conflicts of the movie, and like not a serious conflict, but like one of the through lines of the movie probably should have been, is she going to end up being like a by the book agent, or is she going to be corrupted somewhat by Agent H? And I don't mean corrupted in a bad way, but is like have it be where he's trying to like make her into, look, you shouldn't listen to like, the brass, this is how you do things. Like that would be more fun to see, like she gets partnered up with this like crazy agent that everyone is like kind of scared of, and it's like the wild child in the MIB, and he's like, look, this is what we should do, and she's like, but I'm new, I think I'm on probation. Like even just that, the idea of her being on probation could have been used for a lot of comedy if they were willing to let him keep on getting her into bad situations.
And they're trying pretty desperately to make this Marvel in black, like they're trying to do the Marvel banter, and it's not quite hitting. Like I agree with you that they're both. I mean, I think these two actors are just incredibly charming. Like they are so charming. They're both beautiful. I was
just about to say we should also say they both look incredible in those suits.
They just look good. You want to be like This is gonna sound bad, but I like watching some beautiful people in Hollywood blockbusters. It's fun. It's like it adds another sense of it. And these two are just gorgeous to look at. They are just. The chemistry works, and the banter's not.
Yeah,
it's weird because your brain is skipping a beat. You're like, oh, this is totally working, but it's not at all. And that's why it falls down when me saying it's 2 out of 4 stars. It's just kind of like 50% a movie.
And on that note, I think, and again, I think this is probably a lot, as you were alluding to this earlier, where as we talk about the movie, we'll probably say like, well, can you see the seams? Can you see like the rewrites? Yes, I think you can. I think one of the best examples is this movie seems to have no idea if it wants to suggest that these two are into each other romantically or not.
Yeah.
Like, it's all over the map on that. Like, it's hinted at sometimes, other times it's like, no, they don't like each other. Other times it's like, no, this is going to be just a more professional relationship. And even by the movie's end, I don't think they figured it out. Like, they don't know, are these two like a couple? How into each other are they? You know, they give each other some longing looks, but is that just like a, wow, I respect you as an agent? The movie's like afraid to commit one way or another.
Yeah. You know what they do commit to, though, is CGI.
Oh, yes.
Okay, the old Men in Black film was awesome because when you see these aliens, they were prosthetics, they were animatronics. Yes, they did some CGI enhancements when they needed to, but they felt real. They felt grounded. They felt like, even in this surreal landscape that we were watching, that these creatures were living here on Earth. In this movie, is every alien just a human body with a CGI alien head? Like, they're all cartoons. Every single alien is just a cartoon character. They look like something ripped out of Pixar. And there's nothing tangible. You can even tell when characters are even touching them or even holding things. They're not there. And it's not working. And even the sets. Walking into the MIB set of the first movie, it felt like a real place. Every set in this movie, even the outdoor set, Trev, they look like green screen and CGI extensions. It feels like this entire movie was filmed on a soundstage.
There's certainly what I was definitely thinking, and we'll talk about Pawnee in a moment, the Kumail Nanjiani character, and I guess he would be the best candidate for this, but I'm not ready to give him that award. But, there's no like very memorable signature distinctive alien out of this one, you know. There's nothing where you walk out of it going, oh man, remember how cool that one alien was? Like, the only one I kind of have a memory of, because it's like a little bit of a punchline, is that like caterpillar thing that walks up to her in the headquarters and she touches it and they go like, don't touch it, and it breaks into a bunch of like little ones. But I only remember that because it's like a joke. There's all the rest of them, they're all CGI, but beyond that, they're boring. The alien designs in this are boring.
Like I said, they're human. Most of the time, they're human people. Like, it looks like a human frame and the CGI head.
Yeah, like I think like a key character of this is Vungus the Ugly, right? Who is a member of an alien royal family. He's an old friend of Agent H's. He's someone they are sent to, speak to about something. And he's kind of like a featured character for quite a bit. His like what happens to him like sets them off in the adventure they go. And he's just like such a boring like design. You know, you want that character to be very memorable. You want that character to be kind of fun. And he just looks like a blue kind of blob guy. I don't know. It's people would have to like look it up to know what I'm talking about, but there's just like nothing appealing about him, and that's too bad, because like they're kind of playing off this joke about how he's like hitting on Tessa Thompson and she's kind of like disgusted by it, but you're just kind of like, I don't know, he just looks like every other alien that you were just hanging out with at the headquarters. There's like nothing that like memorable about him.
Yeah, like even his name is Vungus, which obviously is like fungus, and it's like, come on, it's right there. Make him disgusting. I said in the first movie that it's got a sensibility that's gross. You know, it's slimy. It's certain aliens are just kind of gross to look at. There's a big worm guy, and even the main character Edgar, when he turns into the actual beetle at the end, he's gross and slimy, and he's memorable. In this movie, you're right. This character, who again rhymes with fungus, just looks like a blue blob. And it doesn't work because his character, he's hitting on Tessa Thompson, and he's kind of supposed to be this sleazy, disgusting thing, and it just, I don't get it. And even, okay, like the two main villains, the antagonists of the movie, are just guys with dreadlocks. They are the Matrix Reloaded twins. That's all they are. And it just is, there's nothing to them at all.
These are the two.
Why do they look like people the whole time?
These are two who are the two who are played by Laurent and Larry Bourgeois, who are professionally known as Les Twins. They are French dancers, choreographers, producers, models, designers, and creative directors of a brand called 11 Paris. So,
and not actors.
not actors. But apparently F. Gary Gray was like really taken with them and really wanted them to be the villains. And as I said, they did some rewriting just to accommodate that. And then you're watching this, and as you just said, like, yes, they're distinctive looking because they're two identical twins. They're obviously very handsome. But it's like, well, why did he want them other than the really stupid part where they come into the club and suddenly dance? Because obviously they are professional dancers. But you go like, why would why would this shape-shifting alien duo suddenly start dancing? I don't get it. Like, but that's like clearly the only reason he wanted them, because there's nothing else they do where you go like, oh, that's why I wanted those two. Like, you could have got any set of twins, or you could have just got like one person and filmed them twice, the way a lot of movies do with twins, you know. So I didn't really get why F. Gary Gray was so taken with them that he needed them to be the villains. And we'll speak more about whether they're the villains later, whatever.
Well, I alluded to before that the original trilogy at least had distinct villains, right? And we didn't even mention him yet, but Vincent D'Onofrio is one of the greatest cinematic villains of all time as Edgar.
Edgar, what on earth was that?
Sugar.
I've never seen sugar do that.
Give me sugar. In water. More. More.
Hey, your skin is hanging off your bones.
Oh, yeah. Is that leather?
And I hate to keep comparing to the original. I really hate it, because we try not to. The same way we try not to shit on actors. But these guys don't speak. They stand around. They become CGI clouds and then not. And all I'm thinking is like, man, Edgar was awesome.
Yeah. No, you're right. Awesome. They don't, like, when you set up the main antagonist in the film for, like, you know, the majority of the runtime, to not have any personality, to just be a physical threat, that's boring. Like, all they ever do is show up and attack our heroes. But we want them to be kind of funny. You know, like, Edgar was scary and funny, right? I don't like part 2, but I remember Lara Flynn Boyle playing a character, you know, and kind of doing like this sexy femme fatale thing. You could say I don't even know who the villain is in the third one, but yeah, I'm guessing it's not just like a cloud that shows up and fights you sometimes.
It's Flight of the Conchords guy. What's his name?
Brett or Jermaine?
Jermaine. It was Jermaine.
Okay.
Yeah. So he is. Well, I just forgot his name, but he is memorable in the movie. And I think that's, if you're going into a new franchise right now, you're already failing on the duo, right? In some respects, you are succeeding in some as well. So I'll
failing
give it that.
in writing the duo, not in casting the duo.
Correct. And equally as challenging is finding that right villain. And it sucks because those two are so lame. And then with like 30 minutes to go in the movie, we meet up with Rebecca Ferguson.
Dude, okay. I was just about to say, because first of all, I did not know she was in this. I did not look at anything before starting to watch it. So I was super excited when she shows up.
Yeah.
And then what I was just about to cut you off actually and say, and you know what's really frustrating, Chris, is they've got the right person there to be the main villain.
I know.
They have Rebecca Ferguson, who, let's just face it, I think today is one of my favorite people to see on screen, just in general. It's like, not only is she gorgeous, but she's just also like so dynamic, so charismatic. Just, she can play a badass. She can be really vulnerable. You know, I mean, like Rose the Hat is one of my favorite villains, like the past like 5 years in movies.
Same year too, 2019.
Dr. Sleep, and then she's awesome as Lady Jessica in Dune. Obviously kicks major ass in the Mission Impossible franchise. I just love Rebecca Ferguson. I'm so excited to see her show up, and then she doesn't do much. She's got a third arm, and she fights them for a little bit, and that's kind of it. And she's like Age's ex-girlfriend, and I guess that's supposed to be kind of funny, but it's not. You know, but yeah, why isn't she the villain, right? Like, even if it's like, I would even accept if they just did like the boring trite, she's the villain because she's like scorned by him breaking up with her or something. Fine. Sure. At least I'd get Rebecca Ferguson as the villain, you know.
she is just always so exciting and dynamic on screen, and I'm so glad you didn't know that she was a part of the movie, because well, of course, I had forgot as well for the second time. But yeah, she has an interesting look to her character too. The third arm thing is, it works. Don't
get me wrong, I can certainly think of, the potential of Rebecca Ferguson with the third arm. Like,
yeah, why would you ever break up with her? That was a poor move by Agent H.
Yeah, definitely.
But no, she's great, and it's very, very upsetting that she's just gone. They don't even really dispatch of her either. It's just kind of like, no, we're moving on.
Yeah, because even like the idea of her, she's an intergalactic arms dealer. She like lives in this like cool compound on this island. It's like, yeah, this seems like an interesting character. Oh, okay, well, she's gone. All right.
Do you think they gave her the third arm because she's an arms dealer? That's what they did, right? They sat there and thought there, and then they said, yeah.
But then why not make that joke more clear, right? Okay, tangent then, because you brought that up, all right? Not even a tangent. Another thing I want to talk about this movie. We'll get back to like cast stuff in a moment. But I do think, again, I was thinking about how if they had done the 21 Jump Street crossover, right, you would have been pushing this franchise into sillier territory. Because, it's obviously already kind of silly, but it was always, there was a level of like grounded reality to it that clearly they were going to have to be willing to break if they did the 21 Jump Street crossover, right? It would have been more self-referential, it would have been more meta. I almost think this movie should have still gone for that a little bit, and like, again, to try and separate itself from the Sonnenfeld trilogy, because, no offense to F. Gary Gray, but he doesn't have the same distinctive like visual style. This movie just doesn't kind of sing the way the Sonnenfeld movies did, even the ones that didn't work. But there's a couple of moments where I thought it could have, right? So like you just said, like, why you could push that arms dealer joke. There's a moment in one of the first action scenes where the two twins are fighting the duo, and H keeps telling M to pull out other guns from the car, right? He goes like, hit the rear view mirror, and she hits it, and it opens up this thing, and like 3 guns pop out. Then he's like, get the exhaust pipe, and it turns out that that's like a gun as well. I love a joke that never ends. I think you know this about me.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, like, if I had made this movie, I would have pushed that so far. I would have had them just like dismantle that car and had it just like never end, where he's like, okay, now grab the back of the seat, right? Oh, now grab the steering wheel. Oh, the gear shift, right? Like, it would have been so funny if they pushed that very, very far. And then the other moment I wrote that kind of like is like the one weird like remnant of this, or like the one weird indication that maybe they're thinking of it, is there's a moment where they're going to go to Riz's hideout. And he's like, well, I guess we got to go see RZA. And Kumail Nanjiani's character is like, oh, yes, great. Let's go to RZA's fortress of for sure death. And then when you go to the compound, they put like the titles up whenever they go somewhere. It says like London, or it says like, New York, whatever. And then they go to her fortress and it says on screen, RZA's fortress. And then there's like a beat and then it says of for sure death. And it's like, I like those kind of jokes. I like when the movies remind you it's a movie and like take the piss out of themselves. And this movie should have had more of that. Again, just to give itself its own identity.
And they kind of hint that there may have been that, because like there's so many neuralizers in the movie as well, more than there ever has been in the franchise. And Agent M comments on it. He's like, is that just all you guys do is neuralize people? And I like that. What I didn't like is she says that right before they have a chase scene throughout the entirety of Marrakesh and in front of thousands and thousands of people. And okay, I'm going to compare this to another bad movie, a movie that's worse. I'll say that. And it's the Fantastic Beasts films. I hate when a movie establishes a secret society that everybody should be quiet about, and hush hush, don't we can't let the normies know about it. But then everything is just big and loud. Because in the rule book they have a magical thing that can wipe memories, either tech or spells. That drives me crazy, because that should only be used as a last resort. In the first Men in Black, it was never like, oh, we'll just do whatever the fuck we want, and we'll just neuralize everybody anyways. Who gives a shit?
Because in fact, they even had jokes about how they weren't sure like what the lasting repercussions of that were.
Yeah. And in this one, it's just a symptom of blockbusters made today. That everything just needs to be huge and big and loud and CGI, even if it clashes with pre-existing established rules of the world.
No,
and that drove me crazy.
That's another thing this movie should have made a joke about, because I was thinking that too during the sequence where they go to like the nightclub in London. And at that point I just started thinking, man, we're 4 movies in now, and this has gotten bigger and bigger each time. At this point, this like whole idea of like aliens living on Earth, how are people like not realizing this?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, it's gotten to the point where you can't believe that this is a secret anymore. That like the Men in Black are being able to keep this a secret, especially for, as small as they're supposed to be. And just that this movie finally reveals that there's like kind of multiple branches all over the world. Also, by the way, another thing we're 4 movies in, I don't think they've ever answered is, if they're all agent and then a letter of the alphabet, how can there be more than 26 agents?
I know.
This has like never been discussed in the movies. I know. But yeah, like, so it's just like you have to at some point have to start making a joke of that, about the idea that this can't be a secret anymore. People like must realize something is going on.
Or what you do is right when they get out of Marrakesh, you see all the people stopping in their tracks, being like, "What the hell did we just see?" And then all of a sudden, a big plane comes overhead, like this giant aircraft carrier, and just flashes the city. And it's like, okay, like it's commenting on how ridiculous this is now, that they're getting so out of control that they need an Airbus to neuralize the entire population of Marrakesh. Like that would work in the goofiness and that playing with the rules part of it. But no, they just leave Marrakesh and they never come back to what's going on with all those people that just saw this basically the land speeder.
There's even a moment where she uses her neuralizer, like they're on like a land speeder and they stop and they're like in a town square or something, and she's like, hey, neuralizer, and she like flashes it in just 2 directions. But I'm thinking like, you were surrounded like 360 there. You just got like some of the people. But the movie doesn't care because it has to just keep the chase scene going.
Yeah.
Can we return to some performances now?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to briefly highlight. So as I said, I didn't see the 3rd film. So this is my first time seeing Emma Thompson as Agent O, the new head of the MIB. I will say she's only in a couple scenes in this. I actually think Emma Thompson is like really well suited for this role like this franchise. I think she like plays that character. Like it's like I said, not much screen time, but I really quite liked her in this actually. And I'm guessing she's probably equally good in 3. I just thought there's something about her where she seems very authoritative, but she also seems like you can tell she's kind of having fun with it.
We are above the system, over it, beyond it. We are them, we are they, we are the Men in Black.
The Men in Black?
Don't start. I've had the conversation. And they don't seem to be able to let it go. It's a process. Attachment issue, I think. There's your first assignment.
So I did quite like her, and I actually would have been fine with like more of her in it. I was excited to see briefly. Now I found out afterwards, after the fact, that he played Vungus also, and I didn't realize that because it's like a CGI thing.
Yeah.
But the actor Kayvan Novak, who he also plays Nasser and Bassam, who is this alien they run into in Marrakesh, who has like Bassam is actually, when we first see Nasser, he has a beard, and it turns out the beard is a small alien named Bassam that lives on his face. I just bring him up. It's not like that character's that great, but I was excited that it was Kayvan Novak because he currently plays Nandor on What We Do in the Shadows, which for my money is no contest the funniest show on TV today. Anybody who's not watching that show is doing themselves a disservice. It was kind of cool to see him in this before that show had gotten going. I was like, oh, that's cool that he's in this.
Cool.
But now, can we talk about Kumail Nanjiani as Pawnee? Because I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on Pawnee, who's clearly like the new, clearly like meant to be like the new like Frank the Pug, right? Like this is gonna be the fun like little CGI sidekick. He was, I was always worried about this character from the trailers. I'll talk about whether I was right to be worried in a moment. I want to hear what you think first.
I'm gonna say something maybe controversial. Okay. Mm-hmm. I know Kumail Nanjiani is beloved. I get it. But he keeps being miscast in like all of the projects that I like. Okay. Go ahead.
I agree. That's
like
okay.
why?
That's
Okay.
Because I love Kumail Nanjiani as a stand-up and as just a general like person. I think he seems like a great person. I think he seems very, very. I just love interviews with him. I think his story is very cool. I love The Big Sick. I think like there's no denying his talent when you watch a movie like that. But then he has to be used in a very particular way because he has a very distinctive personality and voice. Mm-hmm. And because everyone loves him, I think he's just getting put in a lot of things that maybe he shouldn't be in. Like I haven't watched Obi-Wan yet, but knowing that Kumail Nanjiani is in it, I'm actually like very, very worried if I'm going to be able to like even handle that.
It doesn't work. Like it doesn't work. He is too modern of a person to be in stuff like Obi-Wan Kenobi. It doesn't work. and anybody who says it works is wrong. And it totally takes you out of it. Anyway, it's not the Obi-Wan cast, but he's not good in this. I think the character has maybe some promise. There's something maybe there, but again, Kumail is in charge of it, and I'm not a fan of him in movies. I don't know what else to say. He's a good stand-up, like you said. He's good in small doses, but he should not be in Eternals. He should not be in Men in Black International, and he should fucking definitely not be in Kenobi. So I don't want to make fun of actors, and I don't want to talk shit. But Kumail is just a very interesting career to me.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I thought Stuber was fine, right? It's not a great movie, but like that's the thing. If he's in something that is modern and he's just kind of playing himself or a version of himself, that like works. That's the thing. Is like, again, I don't mean this in an offensive way. There are just certain actors who are so distinctive in their delivery style, and like they're just their whole thing, right? Where you go like, oh, you kind of always need to be a version of yourself. And the thing is, there's plenty of franchises and plenty of worlds where that would work for Kumail Nanjiani. And here, we haven't even explained Pawnee. Pawnee is a very small alien. He's about the size of like an egg. He's even kind of egg-shaped. And he's this like tiny little alien warrior that his whole, like he's a guard. He's meant to protect like a queen. And the two twins, they kill the queen. And so he's going to commit suicide because he has nothing to live for now. And instead, he kind of latches on to Agent M and decides she's his new queen. So he becomes like a little comedic sidekick. And the problem is, it's just one of those cases where the movie's trying so hard to like make him the cute, funny, comedic thing. Like they want to, I'm sure they wanted to like merchandise this character, right?
Yeah.
And it just doesn't work. I found him very, very aggravating.
He's too recognizable. That's all it is. And Kumail doesn't have the, again, this is gonna sound bad, but Kumail doesn't have the chops to do a performance that's not him. That's what it is. He can't not be himself.
And whenever he reads a line, he has a delivery style that sounds like he's making fun of the line.
Yes.
Right? It sounds like he's like mocking the material more than like taking it at face value. I think that's the problem with Kumail Nanjiani. He needs to play like a smarmy, sarcastic character, because if you have him playing anything kind of else, it's like, oh, it just doesn't work.
And you know, the script isn't doing him any favors either, because he is a genuinely funny guy. So I'll say something nice about him. Kumail is a funny guy, and his stand-up's all right, and he's probably a nice guy, okay, and he's obviously talented in some respects, but he makes a notebook joke, you know, and like in 2019. Yeah. So that's where
he also makes a Kanye joke.
Ah, yes.
Anyway, one other performance I wanted to get to, Chris, and here we have to go into spoilers for this, okay?
Yes.
So if you do not want Men in Black International spoiled for you, stop listening. But as we mentioned earlier, kind of a through line of this film is the idea that there is a mole. There's a mole within the Men in Black. Now, Chris, I want to read you some of my notes for this movie, because again, I went in this only remembering that it has Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson, and really nothing else, really. Right. I didn't know Rebecca Ferguson was in it. I'd kind of forgotten about the Nanjiani alien from the trailers, although I certainly remember once he popped up. But I was also not aware that Liam Neeson was in this. And Chris, I want to read you the very first note I wrote, because he's in that very first scene. I wrote, Liam Neeson, probably bad guy. Because I was just thinking to myself, like, oh, I didn't know he was in it. And then it's just like, well, that's a pretty big actor to be in this. And like I knew, like from the trailers, and what I kind of knew is like, oh, I don't think he's like a main like part of this. Like, why do you get Liam Neeson? So like right away in my head, I'm like, oh, he's probably a bad guy. Then another note halfway down the page, 48 minutes in, discussion of mole, it's Neeson. So that's the point where the movie tells us 48 minutes in that there's probably a mole, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's gonna be him.
Yeah.
And in a case like that, you might think, oh, well, maybe the movie's going to do something clever and like make it seem like it's him, and it's not him. No, it's him. It's Liam Neeson. I called that about 10 seconds in. Yeah, so, and that is the problem when you do a mole storyline in a movie and you have a pretty big star as like a side character. I think we all know where it's heading, right? Like, were you shocked by this when you watched the movie?
No, not at all. I think that the moment I knew it is because it was, as we said before, the beginning of the film starts with a flashback in 2016, and Chris Hemsworth gets sidelined for whatever reason, and then he goes back up. He gets sidelined on the Eiffel Tower, and he, Liam Neeson has left his own devices for a while, and then Chris Hemsworth comes back up, and it just kind of cuts away. And it was like, oh, okay, we have to return back to that 2016 flashback because we have to explain what happened at some point. And you needed Agent H to be away from anything. So the audience didn't know what was going on. So right away you're like, oh, well, he's been corrupted in some I don't know if I thought he was like the actual alien, but I was like, oh, he's in league with them, or he was tainted, or he was coerced, or something's going on with this fucking guy.
Yeah, because the movie also has, like, they're doing another thing where they've got another character played by Rafe Spall, who's another actor I like, playing Agent C, and he's like the shitty agent who doesn't really like trust H and is always on his case. And when they kind of bring up the mole thing, the movie like wants you to be like, oh, well, it's probably C because he's like such an asshole, right? But the problem is we've seen other movies, and like this is the ultimate, like, it's been done 300 times before, right? Where it's like, oh, that guy must be the mole. Oh no, actually at the end he's going to turn out to be okay. And sure enough, talk about this is like one of the laziest, most like deserved versions of this I've ever seen before. Where at the end they just like suddenly sees like, no, actually, you know what? I kind of like you. I think you're fine. Like, it's like it comes out of nowhere. There's no moment where that the movie doesn't earn it at all. Just he goes from being this like distrustful, like, like little twerp who hates H, and then at the end he's just like, no, actually I like him and I support him taking over the whole branch. Like, what? Huh? Like, it's
And that's why. No, and that's why I go back to this movie just being kind of a nothing burger. And I was a little worried to talk about this movie too. And honestly, it seems like we're wrapping up pretty quick compared to other episodes. But that's the thing. You have a duo that's being trashed by the script. You have a mystery that is obvious and completely uninteresting. You have a visual style that is flat and full of CGI. Yep. You don't have a villain. I'm sorry. Those two are not villains. Those are basically those should be the hired help or the thugs.
Villains. This is another thing I want to talk about, like where the script gets confusing, because it's eventually revealed the way they find out that Liam Neeson is the mole is they eventually find out and discover, oh, those two guys we thought were villains, the twins, they weren't bad. This whole time they were trying to get the mega weapon because they needed to fight the Hive.
Right.
The problem is we've seen the twins kill people at this point. Like suddenly the movie wants us to be like, oh, well, they were just trying to like get the weapon to protect themselves, but they killed Fungus. They like killed the guy whose form they took. Like, so again, the movie's like,
and horrifically killed him.
Oh, horrifically, yes. And it's like confused, right? So I don't know how we're supposed to feel about them at the end. And even like on that level, the last kind of like major note I have here, which is again speaking to just how kind of bad the script is. Is there's this like running line throughout the movie, right? It's something that High T like tells his agents, and it's the universe has a way of leading you where you're supposed to be, the right time, the right place, right? So this is something that gets brought up time and time again. And at the end of the movie, H and M are fighting Liam Neeson, who, as you said, we discover earlier in the movie earlier in time was taken over by the Hive, and all this time he's been kind of an undercover agent working at the MIB, waiting for the moment he could get his hands on this technology to finally bring his entire race back to Earth and conquer it. And he opens this portal, and this portal is going to bring the Hive back. And Tessa Thompson gets sucked into that portal. And she gets sucked in the portal, and as she's going through the portal in slow motion, we hear that dialogue play again. The movie plays the dialogue where it says, the universe has a way of leading you where you're supposed to be. And you think, oh, okay, well, she's going to find something in this portal. Something's going to happen to her in this portal that's going to, like, solve the case or, like, reveal to her what she needs to do. No, she gets pulled out of the portal and picks up a gun and shoots him. And I was like, wait a minute. What was the deal with that? Like, the universe will put you, like, it's all that for just, like, then you get pulled out of the portal and you just, like, grab a weapon and kill the guy? That makes no sense. Like, that does not track with that, like, line being such an important thing. Just, oh, my God. Again, the script is like, what are they doing?
And she's also pulled back from the portal by the egg alien, Pawnee.
Yeah.
With little tiny jetpacks. And somehow, that alien it pulls Tessa Thompson the opposite direction of this incredibly powerful stream. And technically saves the day.
Yeah.
So not even our heroes save the day, really.
No.
Kumail does. Yeah, it's just again, it is a nothing burger. I don't know, for a franchise starter to revitalize the series. It feels like a work for hire pale imitation.
Yeah, I think the movie's greatest victory is that for everything very negative you just said, it is like we said, you never like hate it.
No,
right? It's like you just kind of watch it, and there's like just enough jokes that kind of work, and the leads are just charismatic enough that you kind of sit there and go like, all right, like whatever, you know. But the problem is, as you said, that's not what you need to restart a franchise, and it's certainly not what this concept deserves. And again, it just feels like this is just another case of they just cannot get this formula right. No matter that first one was such magic, and they just can't like replicate it. And it's I don't know, like the tools were there this time, they just didn't know how to use them.
I think your analogy with Ghostbusters was quite apt, and it's funny, for whatever reason that has never hit me, that the Men in Black franchise is similar to Ghostbusters. It might be because I'm just not really a Ghostbusters fan. I mean, I obviously love the first one, but at this point the fandom and the sequels has ruined that IP for me entirely. But yeah, it is so lightning in a bottle that it's been mishandled for decades now. And there's just without going the Legacy-quel way, and I think we would both hate that, you know, if it went the Ghostbusters Afterlife way with extreme nostalgia and almost like misremembering Men in Black 1. You know, like if it started to, fetishize the noisy cricket, you know, I think would be a fundamental misunderstanding. So like, I have to ask you, and I don't want to put you on the spot. Sometimes I do, but I'm going to anyway. Where do you go from here? Where do we take this franchise if we even want to attempt it anymore? First of all, I could ask you, do you want it to be attempted again?
Well, not necessarily. Like, I don't care to see another Men in Black movie or whatever. But the part of me that knows Sony probably can't leave this just on the table, right? The fact that they will try again.
Yeah.
I'm glad you asked, because we don't do this as often as I think we originally intended to. I think a part of our show early on was to always say, like, well, what would you do next if you had to keep this going? And so I actually did give that some thought with this one. And the reason I did was because some of the talent who showed up. So it's actually very, very interesting that I didn't even know it, but I asked you who the villain was in part 3, and you said, "Oh, it's Jermaine Clement." I didn't know that, and that actually leads into what I'm about to say, because I was thinking about this when Kayvan Novak showed up, because as I said, he plays Nandor in What We Do in the Shadows, and first of all, the movie What We Do in the Shadows, which was from Taika Waititi and Jermaine Clement, is I think one of the best comedies of the modern era.
I think we drink virgin blood because it sounds cool.
I think of it like this. If you were going to eat a sandwich, you would just enjoy it more if you knew no one had fucked it.
I just love that movie. And as I said, I think the TV show is by far the funniest show on TV. Another, it's actually like, I'm not sure everyone knows this, but that's like a little bit of a shared like universe at this point, because the TV show happens in the same universe as the movie. It's different characters, but it's the same world. The characters from the movie have appeared in the show. And in New Zealand, there's actually another show called Wellington Paranormal that is a show all about the 2 police officers that show up for one scene in the movie. And now this show reveals like they actually get recruited into a secret part of the police department entirely devoted to dealing with paranormal events in Wellington, New Zealand. And that show is actually on HBO Max. You can watch it here in America as well. I don't know if you have it in Canada or whatever, but it's awesome. It's very, very funny. And the whole thing is it's played like, the whole What We Do in the Shadows is a mockumentary in general.
Yeah.
And Wellington Paranormal is obviously played like cops, but it's cops where they're doing paranormal cases. And so when he appeared on screen, Kayvan Novak, it suddenly just clicked to me, oh, if you had to do more Men in Black, what I might actually do is do a show on a streaming service and do it like that. And it would just be, I'm fully admitting, just fully rip off Wellington Paranormal and do Men in Black as a cops type mockumentary now. I think that might actually be kind of funny. If you could strike that, like that Taika Waititi, Jermaine Clement, Rhys Darby, like sense of humor, and apply it to Men in Black and just watch Men in Black, like 2 agents, get 2 very, very funny agents, and just show us a bunch of their adventures. And like, forget about the world ending stakes.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
But what are their like everyday jobs like? And just give us a full season of that. That's the only thing left that I could care to see from Men in Black, I think.
I think that is, first of all, great. I would absolutely tune in for that. But you nailed it by saying we have to get away from world-ending stakes.
Yep.
That is something that is dominating, I think, all of modern blockbuster fare. It's always it's never intimate. It's never on the day-to-day. It's like it's this or the fucking world, and in this case, the universe is over. It's hard to come back from that. You know, and I think we've said this before too. That's kind of what's happening to me with the MCU is that, you know, we did Endgame, which was, all about the end, or to at least 50% of the universe. So coming back from that and still trying to do world-ending stories are almost meaningless now. And the stakes just aren't there. And I think with this goofy surrealism of the Men in Black franchise, I think a TV show mockumentary would be hilarious. I think it would play to all of those strengths. Absolutely. Especially if you got Barry Sonnenfeld back for that. That'd be pretty sweet. Yeah. And look, Tim, I mean, I want to make the connection with Tim Burton, but hey, Tim Burton's going to TV now with the Addams Family. How funny is that? He's taken that franchise going to TV. Well, let's do Barry Sonnenfeld go to TV with Men in Black. So. And
honestly, like, if you want to use Kumail Nanjiani in this franchise, like, that's where he should have been. Like, not Pawnee, but like, if you did like that show and made him one of the agents, like, that's exactly where his like sensibility would work. You know, but
100%. Well, I don't have any better ideas than that. so
well, guess what? Neither does Sony. So
okay, good.
You're no better than a multi-billion-dollar corporation. So.
So my parents tell me when I was young. So audience, you obviously know where we lie on the movie. We just think it's blah. Like, I mean, it's fine.
I can't recommend it. I mean, it's not. Don't go out of your way to see it. If it's on TV and you are like vacuuming or something and need something just on, fine. But like, it's just I mean, don't go out of your way to avoid it, I guess, but don't go out of your way to see it. It's just like one of those, you know?
Yeah. Well, again, this was the start to our new theme months, actually. Summer Surprise Part 2, where we randomized our choices. So the next episode, hopefully, is different. It is June 21st. We're looking at Son of the Pink Panther from 1993. Trev is kind of a Pink Panther expert. I don't want to bury the lead a little bit, but he is kind of an expert. I am not so much.
This will be the first Pink Panther film you've ever seen, correct? Or no? Or are you seen the Steve Martin ones?
I will not tell you that answer.
Okay.
Yeah, I won't tell you the answer. Yeah. July 5th, we are looking at Darkest Minds from 2018. Neither of us have a history with that. No. And then July 19th, to cap off Summer Surprise Part 2, we are looking at V.I. Warshawski from 1991. I thought these choices were... interesting to say the least, but I do like that we get a couple of fairly recent failures, and then we flash back to the early 90s. So I'm actually quite looking forward to that.
I also just I think it's 4 very different movies. And so I think this actually kind of worked out in that regard. We've been doing theme months where we've been like pairing things together, and here we have 4 movies that are just so vastly different. I think that's what's kind of fun about this. So.
Like a literal crapshoot.
Which is good because we won't say too much about it yet, but after Summer Surprise, we're heading into like a more sustained, like long event. So it's kind of nice to do something so varied for the moment.
Definitely. So follow along with us at F2F Pod. That's at F2, the number 2 F Pod on all the socials. Like us there, like us everywhere. Rate, review, whatever you do. Shoot us a star rating. That'd be awesome. And then just join the tribe, hit that subscribe, and keep on with us among friends. This Summer Surprise Part 2. So, yeah. And before we go, Trev, I know we've been friends for many, many years at this point. But I have this gadget. Can you just look at it, please? Look, stare right at it, please.
Oh, I mean, Chris, is this going to help me forget Men in Black International? Because trust me, I am all in. Let me get my eyes right up in this baby.
No, you'll be happier because it'll eliminate our friendship.
Oh, that's good too. All right, let's go.